Please be aware that this video contains discussions of parental abuse. If this is not something you are comfortable with, I would recommend not watching this video. There is something in the Percy Jackson series that, for as long as I've been reanalyzing it on my podcast, has annoyed the hell out of me in how it is forgotten both in the text and seemingly also by the fandom. And that is the fact that Annabeth Chase is an abuse victim. Now, if you want more detailed discussions of this, you can check out my podcast, The Best Damn Camp, linked in the description box, because I mention this in various different episodes. But Annabeth Chase is a victim of emotional abuse, neglect, emotional manipulation, and gaslighting by her family and other characters, and even the books themselves. And it's something I truly do not understand why Rick thought this was a good idea. So I just want to discuss a few different things here. First one being the gaslighting that Annabeth experiences, because she experiences quite a lot. First one being from the parental figures themselves. Now, we learn in Heroes of Olympus that when she was a child, before she ran away, she was being assaulted, in a sense, by spiders every night for weeks on end, days on end. And she would scream for her father's help. She would scream and scream and scream and scream. And all she would be told when her stepmother came in would be to stop bothering her father. He's working, he doesn't need this. So the blame for these situations and for the fact that she was being attacked was put on her. Then, because she was a demigod, she would heal from the bites that were given to her over the night. So when she tried to show them to her family, they would have disappeared by that point. So they didn't believe a word she was saying and made it, I would assume, even though we don't really see this part, make it out that she was lying to them. When we know for a fact that her father knows that she is a demigod, Athena himself brought her in a cradle to him, even though they clearly never actually had sex, because obviously brain baby. He is a historian. He would know what she is and the abilities that demigods have. He'd have figured it out at least, because, you know, demigods don't exactly get sick, and kids are very sickly children. But Annabeth probably wouldn't have ever gotten sick. And yet, no, he doesn't figure it out. They just allow this child to continue to be attacked at night, screaming for help that would never come. Which leads to her running away at 7 years old. The gaslighting that gets me the most, and this is the one that just, I do not understand why Rick thought this was a good idea, comes from Percy himself, an abuse victim himself, where he meets Annabeth's family in the Titan's Curse and thinks, they don't seem bad people. Maybe Annabeth got it wrong. Maybe they weren't as bad as Annabeth made them out to be. Which then puts the blame on Annabeth for the experiences that she had. He's met them once. He met them that one day and assumed that maybe they weren't as bad as Annabeth made them out to be. To the point that he has a conversation with Annabeth of, you know, maybe they're not bad, in a sense to try and convince her to go back home to her abusive family. Even though he knows she ran away at 7, that she was neglected, that her family didn't want her, that she went back when he knew her at the end of The Lightning Thief to her family. And she returns not long after because problems arise again. He's seen what's happened in front of him when he's known her. And yet he still tells her, in a sense, to go back to them. Even though he himself has been, and his family have been, victims of emotional abuse, financial abuse, and both Sally and possibly Percy, of physical abuse as well. What I can't stand is what happens within the text, is that it makes it out that Annabeth was exaggerating. That what led to a 7-year-old child running away from home, she must have just not she must have just been exaggerating. It must not have been as bad as she thought it was. That even she, in the text, in the Titan's Curse, seemingly starts to question if things were that bad. The books themselves gaslight Annabeth, even though it's the books that say and show the abuse that she experienced, of the emotional manipulation, of the trauma that she was having to go through as a child without any support, the neglect that she had to experience of basically feeling and in a sense being told due to the abandonment that the children that her dad and her stepmother have are the ones that they wanted because they're normal. She says it herself, they wanted normal kids, and she was a danger to their family, a family she didn't feel she was a part of anymore. She knows that her father didn't want her. He wanted Athena to take her. He wanted nothing to do with her as a child, and she knows this. So it's been made clear to her that he didn't want her. How screwed up is that for a child to know before the age of 7? And admittedly, she sees them once before, so maybe when she was 10, when she saw them again, she found out then. But at some point when she was a child, she learned that her father never wanted her. And yet, the books continue to push this narrative that she's better off with her family, that it's better for her to go back to her family. The ones who don't actually care about her, the ones who, as far as we're aware, never went in search of the child that ran away, that each time she came back it was so unbearable that she would have to leave again. We never really seemingly get an apology for her. She is the one doing the emotional labour. She is the one who's making the effort to reconcile with her family. They don't. Never in any of the texts do we see do they make the first move to her. An additional caveat, it's also no wonder that she continued to support Luke and hope that he would change, because that's what's continued to happen with her own family. She's kept going back to them, hoping they will change, and just keeps going back to face the same hurt that she always does by doing that emotional labour. And yet we blame her for believing in Luke, when that's all she's known, is going back and hoping that eventually the person will change and accept her and be there for her and with her. It's just a cycle. It is always Annabeth doing that labour of putting herself out there time and time again, and more often than what we've seen, failing and having to come to terms with knowing that her family doesn't want her. And yet she does eventually go back to them, because apparently that's best for her in the text. I truly do not understand why an abuse victim had to go back to the family that led her to being alone all of her childhood, relying on other children to protect her. And yet in the text, Annabeth, the victim, is made out to be the person who was exaggerating, who is the person who needs to go above and beyond to fix things. Both the books and the fandom, because so many people aren't aware of all the things that she went through, forget that Annabeth is an abuse victim. And I really think it's time that we recognise this. But what do you guys think? Do you agree that it is clear in the text that Annabeth went through some traumatic things up until the point that the text no longer needed her to be suffering from that trauma? Because I really feel that the books just decided, or Rick just decided, it's not important for her character anymore, so we'll pretend, all these things didn't really happen, that they didn't really affect her, didn't traumatise her as much as we initially made it out to be. because it's a problem for me, but you know, I would love to hear from you guys in the comment section down below. As always, thank you all so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. Check out my socials and all that good stuff in the description box alongside my Patreon, where if you can support me, that is the place to do so. Can't support me on Patreon, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, drop a thumbs up, thumbs down if you want, share with your friends and all that good stuff. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. And yeah, again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.